Observe the precise moment Senator John Kennedy unlatched a worn-hide briefcase and methodically dismantled Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's legislative future during a live television broadcast. Part 1 covers the intersection and the ensuing clash. Senator Kennedy, you remain an artifact from the segregated era of Louisiana, she stated. You and Donald Trump represent the exact reason this nation is currently perishing. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez delivered this declaration on a live MSNBC broadcast before 700 applauding progressives in central Manhattan to a 74-year-old rural attorney with an aged leather bag resting near his boots. This was a monumental miscalculation. Senator Kennedy's retaliation was incredibly simple. He merely unlocked the satchel. 5 files, 5 phases, and 5 collections of evidence emerged from her personal committee, her dedicated personnel, and her confidential audio tracks. The events unfolding over the subsequent couple of hours terminated a potential presidential trajectory. You are preparing to observe the most flawless legislative dismantling within contemporary American history. That MSNBC studio, situated in central Manhattan, remained densely packed with 700 exultant progressives sporting AOC buttons and wealth tax shirts, representing the exact demographic a channel gathers for a royal crowning. The banner suspended over the platform displayed the title America at the Intersection, serving as a dual-party public forum. The twin identification markers resting upon the desk identified Ocasio-Cortez and Kennedy. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez strolled onto the platform 5 minutes after 8 o'clock, mirroring a boxer approaching a title bout, sporting a beige jacket, crimson lip color, and metallic jewelry reflecting the illumination at 36 years of age. The entire auditorium completely submitted to her presence. Senator John Neely Kennedy strolled on a moment later wearing a dark gray suit and thin-rimmed spectacles resting low on his nose, holding an old hide satchel in his right hand with faded edges. At 74 years of age, he resembled a financial auditor who had stumbled onto the incorrect platform. A handful of individuals within the crowd chuckled as he took his seat. The moderator, Michael Donovan, assumed his position between the two politicians. Tonight, he stated facing the camera lens, we present 2 distinct voices and 2 differing visions for one America. Let us commence the debate. The established structure provided each participant with 4 minutes for an introductory address. AOC utilized 9 minutes for her speech. She labeled Donald Trump as the Mussolini of Mar-a-Lago. She described the Republican faction as a fatalistic obsession camouflaged by patriotic bunting. She referred to Senator Kennedy as an artifact from the segregated era of Louisiana, whose regional drawl served as a disguise and whose traditional charisma remained the most ancient deception in the prejudiced handbook. She informed the crowd that conservative electors were frightened elderly males terrified of females, terrified of minorities, and terrified of any nation that did not resemble the year 1955. She claimed anyone casting a Republican ballot in 2026 was participating in authoritarianism, participating in the passing of minors at the boundary, and participating in the mass destruction of Palestinians. Every single statement resonated perfectly. The audience roared with approval, and AOC absorbed the energy. When she ultimately gestured toward Kennedy without glancing in his direction and bellowed that individuals resembling him and Donald Trump were causing this nation to perish, the auditorium erupted. Mobile recording devices were hoisted alongside custom political placards. The ovation continued for almost an entire 60 seconds. Senator Kennedy remained completely motionless. He rested in his seat, mirroring the posture of a gentleman stationed at a fishing pier at 5 o'clock in the morning monitoring his tackle. His palms rested upon his knees, his spectacles sat low, and his skull angled slightly, mimicking the posture of a tracking hound detecting a sound the remainder of the area had ignored. When the ovation finally concluded, Michael Donovan pivoted toward him. "Senator, please provide your rebuttal." Kennedy repositioned his spectacles, utilizing a single digit. The Southern accent sounded incredibly dense. Over 40 years spent inside Louisiana tribunals had failed to smooth away that dialect. "Madame, you speak exceptionally beautifully." It brings to mind a certain marsupial I previously owned that was incredibly adorable. However, the creature continuously pilfered eggs from the poultry enclosure. The gathered crowd chuckled. They were laughing directly at him. AOC allowed herself a subtle grin. Kennedy hoisted the satchel upward from the ground and placed it upon the desk directly facing his seat. The hide material produced a subtle noise as it contacted the timber. "You must understand, madame. I have operated as a rural attorney for over 40 years, and one crucial lesson I absorbed is that whenever an individual labels you an artifact, you had better verify the contents concealed within their personal storage space." A pair of snaps echoed loudly amidst the silence that had succeeded the chuckling. "Therefore, prior to discussing Trump," Kennedy remarked, "let us discuss your actions." Michael Donovan's grin wavered slightly near a single edge, yet the broadcasting lenses captured the expression regardless. Part 2 begins with the initial document sleeve. The contents preparing to emerge from that satchel were destined to conclude a presidential trajectory. That initial sleeve was constructed from rigid azure paperboard, displaying an emblem pressed in muted yellow across the exterior, denoting the House Committee on Ethics Investigative Report. The edge of the sleeve was slightly creased from where it had rested inside the satchel during transits between Kennedy's workspace inside the Hart Senate facility and 3 distinct appearances on weekend morning broadcasts throughout the preceding week. He hoisted it aloft, mirroring the manner an interrogator displays a lethal instrument, meaning he held it delicately and at a slant, allowing the lens to capture the emblem. "These specific pages represent the finalized conclusions of the House Committee on Ethics," he stated. "It is a dual-party consensus containing 5 Democrats and 5 Republicans, published on the 25th of July, 2025, following a 42-month inquiry involving 12,000 pages of evidence. It involves a legislative representative who appeared at a philanthropic gala where entry passes required $30,000 each. This individual sported a gown, a massive ivory garment. The text displayed across the rear portion in crimson font stated, 'Tax the Rich.'" He paused for a sufficient duration, allowing the crowd to recall the specific picture. Every person present had previously viewed the image. It had decorated every periodical front page for an entire month, including Vogue, Vanity Fair, and Time. "Currently, madam," Kennedy asked, "do you possess any knowledge regarding the identity of that specific representative?" The initial chuckle of the evening that failed to favor AOC's perspective rippled across multiple tiers of the crowd. She maintained a frozen expression. That grin had completely vanished. Occupying its previous position was the specific rigidity of an individual who suddenly comprehends the environment has altered beneath their feet. "That specific inquiry," she stated, and her tone reflected the cautious, calculated pitch she utilized when dealing with antagonistic journalists, discovered no intentional or deliberate breach. "The issue remains resolved." Kennedy inclined his head as though she had simply provided him with fascinating and beneficial data. He flipped a sheet inside the sleeve. "Indeed, madam, I reviewed all 26 pages, every single document twice during the flight here, and I intend to read exactly what the committee ultimately determined." Quote, "Representative Ocasio-Cortez's behavior was contradictory to chamber regulations, statutes, and additional behavioral guidelines," end quote. He flipped another document. "Contradictory to chamber regulations, contradictory to statutes, contradictory to behavioral guidelines. A dual-party conclusion featuring 5 Democrats and 5 Republicans in unanimous agreement." He allowed the phrase to linger throughout the space. AOC parted her lips to speak. Kennedy refused to shift his gaze upward. He refused to elevate his volume. He merely hoisted a single digit upward from the sleeve, the pointing finger, representing a motion as subtle and conclusive as a magistrate slamming a wooden mallet. She shut her lips tightly. "Now, wait a moment, madam. I intend to read the financial records." He extracted the primary paper. The financial department's investigative tracking labels stretched across the upper edge in faded silver ink. He positioned it where the broadcasting lens could focus. The viewers tilted closer, behaving almost like a single entity. Financial record number 1 displays $250. That represents a complimentary pass to the Met Gala meant for your romantic partner, Riley Roberts. The regulatory body determined that gesture constituted an unauthorized present. $250, madam, represents the exact amount working individuals within your region spend on a week of provisions, which covers a fuel fill-up and a telecommunications invoice. You permitted another individual to cover it for your romantic partner so he could loiter while sipping sparkling wine with ultra-wealthy executives. He placed the paper down. He refused to pile the documents, opting instead to place it level adjacent to the sleeve so the emblem remained exposed. He extracted the subsequent paper. Financial record number 2 displays $2,733. That represents the total you failed to cover for the supplementary items, including jewelry, a purse, and footwear. The regulatory body concluded you are indebted for those funds. $2,733 equals an entire month of lease payments for an employed household in the Bronx, madam, an entire month. The subsequent paper emerged much more leisurely. Kennedy grasped it for an extended period. He allowed his gaze to linger over the text prior to speaking. The recording space became so still that the noise of the climate control transformed into a noticeable element, producing a quiet vibration somewhere over the illumination scaffolds. Financial record number 3 details the garment itself. He shifted his gaze upward. It was crafted by a modest enterprise titled Brothers, a minority-owned, female-directed business established in 2013 by a lady titled Aurora James, who happens to be the offspring of a Jamaican maternal figure and a Canadian paternal figure. Miss James launched Brothers, maintaining the vision of introducing handcrafted hide products created by African creators to the American commercial sphere. By the moment you sported that garment, madam, her enterprise employed 30 workers, the majority of whom were minority females. He flipped the document. The financial coordinator's billing statements were secured consecutively. The garment required 250 hours of effort to construct, utilizing manual stitching and manual decoration, while the crimson text across the rear was attached individually. The financial coordinators at Brothers forwarded your administration billing statements during October of 2021, followed by November, followed by December, followed by January of 2022, followed by February, followed by March. 6 separate billing statements spanning 6 months with zero compensation. He allowed the quietness to intensify. The garment displaying tax the rich was crafted by a minority-owned, female-directed, modest enterprise, and you refused to compensate them for 6 months. You exclusively compensated them once the federal inquiry commenced. You compensated them, madam, exactly how you settle an invoice you never planned to settle until an external force compelled you. A lady sitting within the second tier of the crowd pressed her palm against her lips. The broadcasting lenses recorded her reaction. She was a minority female in her mid-50s, sporting a team shirt beneath a jean coat. She remained the initial person inside the auditorium whose expression visibly altered. Financial record number 4, Kennedy proceeded, his tone never altering frequency, never elevating, never descending. A workforce department grievance was submitted on the 23rd of February 2022. The beauty professional who styled your locks that evening, madam, was forced to threaten submitting a federal workforce grievance to receive compensation for her billing statement. An employed female, a Hispanic professional managing 2 offspring of her own while styling the locks of a female displaying tax the rich, was forced to threaten filing with the National Administration to secure her funds. He extracted an additional paper. He grasped it uniquely compared to the preceding documents, utilizing both palms in an almost respectful manner. And financial record number 5. This represents an internal electronic message dispatched on the 11th of September 2021, 2 days prior to the Met Gala, shared between the Brothers' financial coordinator and the media representative managing the event. He stated Met Gala participants typically refrain from funding these items, end quote. He placed the electronic message down. Citizens, he remarked, glancing toward the crowd rather than at AOC, do you comprehend the meaning behind those words? Met Gala participants typically refrain from funding these items. The entire gathering operates under the premise that the legislators and the famous figures receive the garments, the footwear, the cosmetics, and the styling completely without charge. Citizens compensate afterward if they ever compensate at all. That represents the established framework. That describes what the female wearing tax the rich was genuinely carrying upon her spine, a complimentary garment crafted by a minority-owned enterprise that remained uncompensated for 6 months. He pivoted back facing AOC. Madam, 12,000 pages of evidence generated over 42 months by a dual-party committee. They determined the minority creator remained uncompensated. The Hispanic professional was forced to threaten national litigation. Your personnel were messaging suppliers inquiring whether the values could be reduced to maintain your expenses beneath the present limit. Your personnel operating on your behalf requesting the staff to bill lower amounts ensuring you would avoid disclosing the items. AOC's lips shifted. The noise that emerged failed to form a complete utterance. This represents a sex, she attempted once more. Her torso elevated. Her palm lifted toward her neck and subsequently fell. This represents a sex. The expression refused to materialize. The expression that had sustained her political trajectory over 7 years completely failed. The term she had consistently deployed across broadcast media, committee sessions, and demonstration platforms stretching from Detroit to El Paso vanished. The exact phrase designed to terminate countless dialogues before they ever initiated failed her. The sound remained trapped inside her vocal cords. Kennedy paused, mirroring how an angler hesitates while detecting tension along a cord. "I apologize, madam," he murmured softly. "What exactly was that statement?" She located the remainder of the sentence, yet the audio emerged noticeably weaker now, pitched a full octave higher than her standard vocal range. "This constitutes a sexist assault, targeting the solitary Hispanic female within—" "Madam," Kennedy interjected, and currently his tone conveyed a gravity it had completely lacked previously. "That represents nothing remotely sexist. The minority creator remained uncompensated for 6 months. That scenario represents a verifiable truth rather than a sexist action. The Hispanic professional was compelled to register a grievance with the Workforce Division. That scenario represents a national administrative file rather than a sexist action. 5 Democrats alongside 5 Republicans authorized this evaluation unanimously. That outcome represents dual-party consensus rather than a sexist action." The attendees grew utterly silent, matching the specific stillness a crowd adopts exclusively whenever the foundation has altered beneath their stance. The initial complimentary phrase framing AOC's evening had perished inside her mouth, and everyone present had observed its demise. Kennedy shut the azure sleeve deliberately, acting almost affectionately, mimicking how a medical examiner seals a registry. "And, madam," he stated, "this portion merely served as the introduction, because the document I am preparing to display next literally cost genuine employed individuals their careers." Part 3 introduces the secondary sleeve. The secondary sleeve appeared completely crimson. The emblem pressed across the exterior stated New York State Department of Economic Development, Impact Analysis, Amazon, HQ2. Kennedy deposited it upon the desk, mimicking the motion you might utilize when placing a massive volume. He refrained from opening the document immediately. He remained seated for a brief duration observing the folder, and the broadcast space waited alongside him. The attendees had not yet mentally rebounded from the garment revelation. They remained uncertain regarding what they were preparing to witness, yet they had ceased anticipating a pleasant experience. "Madame," he murmured, "this document represents a financial consequence evaluation originating from the administration of New York, compiled during 2019 by the Cuomo leadership team following the cancellation of the agreement. Therefore, your personal faction's executive leader ordered this investigation. It details a development that was scheduled to begin construction within a location designated Long Island City. Do you comprehend where that specific location exists, madam?" The inquiry failed to represent a genuine question. Rather, it functioned like a blade. AOC's mandible tightened. "Long Island City exists inside Queens." It exists within or borders my legislative territory. Correct, madam. It represents your local community. Your electoral base, individuals who supported your campaign, awaken each sunrise and observe the vacant parcels where Amazon was scheduled to construct. He unsealed the sleeve. The initial document displayed a diagram containing vertical stacks of digits, visual blocks, and statistical forecasts. 25,000 careers. That represented the agreement. Amazon guaranteed 25,000 careers, providing a median compensation of $150,000 annually. These positions included storage roles, digital roles, and training initiatives designed for adolescents graduating from Queens educational facilities who lacked a university degree but desired a stable trajectory. 25,000 careers. He allowed the digit to resonate. He flipped the document. $2.5 billion allocated for structural funding. That equals $2,500 million dedicated to genuine fabrication, genuine structures, genuine cement, genuine iron, and genuine metalworkers completing actual schedules, ultimately pouring into the terrain of Long Island City. Another document appeared. $30 billion concerning anticipated fresh administrative income spanning the duration of the development. $30,000 million intended to fund educational facilities, transit enhancements, municipal residences, and medical centers. Those represent the exact concepts you claim you champion, madam. He shifted his gaze upward. And during February of 2019, you destroyed it. AOC parted her lips, attempting to counter. Kennedy refused to permit her. Madame, I lack any necessity to debate this concept with you tonight because a gentleman exists inside this auditorium who possesses the ability to narrate the events far better than any diagram. He pivoted marginally, looking toward the rear section of the recording space. The broadcasting lenses rotated alongside him. He located the tier he was seeking. Mr. Marcus Jefferson, he stated. Would you please rise, gentlemen? A gentleman stood up from the third tier, starting from the rear. He was a minority male in his mid-30s, possessing wide shoulders. He sported a dark blue jacket that fit poorly, representing the specific garment a gentleman purchases for a matrimonial ceremony or a burial service and subsequently stores inside a wardrobe pending the next crisis. His neckwear displayed a uniform crimson hue. His palms matched the palms of a gentleman who utilized them for manual labor. He gripped a creased sheet of yellow-lined writing paper. He possessed zero resemblance to a legislator. He possessed zero resemblance to a legal testifier. He resembled an ordinary sibling. The broadcasting lenses focused upon him. The 700 pairs of eyes within the recording space tracked the movement. Mr. Jefferson, Kennedy stated, could you please explain to the legislative representative exactly what occurred during your existence throughout February of 2019? Marcus Jefferson smoothed the paper. His fingers quivered slightly. He glanced at the sheet before shifting his gaze upward. When he vocalized, his tone remained consistent. My identity is Marcus Jefferson. I was born inside Long Island City. I attended Bryant Secondary School. My paternal figure managed the shipping ports located at Hunts Point. My maternal figure sanitized workspaces in central Manhattan. She traveled via the number 7 transit line to her employment for 31 years. He paused. During 2018, I was 22 years of age. I possessed 2 offspring, aged 1 year and 3 years. I was balancing 2 careers, acting as a sanitation worker at a central workspace structure from 10 o'clock at night until 6 o'clock in the morning, and acting as a dishwasher at an eatery from midday until 7 o'clock in the evening. I rested 4 hours stretching between the dual careers upon a folding mattress located in the rear section of my maternal figure's residence. I generated $23,000 annually. We resided inside a single-chamber unit managed by my maternal figure. My offspring rested upon a cushion placed on the culinary space flooring. He glanced at the document again. He located his sentence. I achieved acceptance into the Amazon HQ2 Municipal Training Initiative during November of 2018. They intended to compensate me $38,000 annually while providing comprehensive medical coverage starting the initial day, allowing me to master storage operations and stock administration. Following 2 years, I was scheduled to receive a promotion to an organizational role earning $65,000. Following 5 years, I would become an operations director earning $90,000. They planned to cover the expenses for my secondary degree at LaGuardia Municipal College. They provided localized child supervision intended for the offspring of the trainees. The recording space remained completely still. You could detect the vibration of the illumination rigs once again. He shifted his gaze upward. He stared directly at AOC rather than glancing at Kennedy. He stared at her. I cast my ballot for you, Representative, on 2 separate occasions. I knocked on entryways supporting your campaign during 2018. I stood outside amidst the precipitation along East Tremont Avenue for 90 minutes simply to cast my ballot for you during your initial preliminary election. My maternal figure supported your campaign. My maternal sibling supported your campaign. My entire residential structure supported your campaign. We assumed you represented our community. We assumed you originated from our exact background. We assumed you comprehended. He swallowed forcefully. On the 14th of February 2019, you rejoiced. You published a statement on a digital platform. You stated everything remains achievable, end quote. I recall viewing that statement upon my mobile device while sitting in the rear section of the eatery throughout my intermission. I recall my fingers beginning to quiver. I recall pondering, everything remains achievable for whom, madam? It certainly was not achievable for me, and it certainly was not achievable for my offspring. His volume refused to escalate. That specific detail rendered the moment devastating. The training initiative perished on that specific afternoon. 36 additional youthful males and females originating from Long Island City forfeited the identical opportunity I forfeited. The majority of those individuals currently remain stuck in their previous circumstances. 3 of those individuals are deceased, madam. One of my peers participating in the initiative lost his life to substance abuse during 2021. He remained sober for 2 years prior to the initiative collapsing. When the program collapsed, he experienced a regression. Another individual was a victim of street violence directly outside his residential structure during 2020. The final individual took his own life during 2022. I attended all 3 burial services. A specific noise emanated from the attendees. It failed to resemble a sharp intake of breath. It was something softer, representing a noise closer to mutual realization. It required 5 years for me to ascend back toward the position I would have occupied on the initial day of that Amazon career. 5 complete years. My offspring are currently 8 and 10 years of age. I forfeited 5 years of possessing the capability to place genuine provisions upon the dining surface. 5 years featuring natal celebrations we lacked the funds to support. 5 years featuring educational materials we were forced to select between. 5 years featuring informing my male child no whenever he requested a recreational sporting glove. All of this occurred due to a single digital statement. He collapsed the paper. The ultra-wealthy executives you claimed you halted, madam, simply departed and constructed facilities in another location, such as Virginia or Nashville. They are currently prospering. Jeff Bezos remains prosperous. Andy Jassy remains prosperous. The sole individuals who experienced defeat were us. The citizens who resembled you resided similarly to you and cast their ballots for you. He returned to his seat. The silence following his seating represented the most deafening silence occupying the auditorium all evening. Multiple moments elapsed. The moderator, Michael Donovan, refused to vocalize. The broadcasting lenses refused to shift. AOC's torso elevated and descended. Her fingers clutched the boundary of the desk. Kennedy permitted the tension to linger. When he vocalized, his volume refused to escalate. 25,000 careers providing $150,000 annually spanning a decade, he stated. That equates to $375 billion regarding compensation. $375,000 million. You deprived your personal electoral base of $375 billion concerning lifetime income. He paused. And subsequently, madam, you departed and purchased yourself a Tesla vehicle. AOC's lips shifted. The expression that intended to emerge was prejudiced or perhaps sexist. The noise that leaked out was a partial sound, a splinter, an element that had shattered during its journey toward the exterior. Rah! Her palm lifted toward her lips. She attempted again. This represents a rah, absolutely nothing further. The expression refused to materialize. The attendees observed the event transpire. They observed her attempt, observed her struggle, and observed her comprehend instantly that the instrument she had utilized over 7 years had ceased functioning while in her grasp. Kennedy nodded gradually, mirroring how a rural minister acknowledges an admission of guilt. Madam, he stated, the calculations ignore whatever shade you represent. Numerical figures lack any prejudice. Numerical figures simply remain numerical figures. Mr. Jefferson seated nearby represents an anti-prejudice reality. The adolescents participating in his training initiative represent an anti-prejudice reality. 3 of those individuals rest beneath the soil, madam. Those individuals represent your community. And you extracted $375 billion from their accounts simply so you could broadcast a digital statement claiming everything remains achievable. He shut the crimson sleeve. Presently, he stated, let us discuss that specific Tesla vehicle. Part 4 covers the image. He refrained from extracting a sleeve during this instance. He delved inside the satchel and retrieved an individual 8x10 image. It featured a glossy finish with edges marginally deteriorated from frequent handling. He placed it face downward upon the desk for an extended duration. The recording space illumination reflected off the ivory boundary. Somewhere inside the 3rd tier, a mobile device lens captured a shot. When Kennedy flipped the image upright, AOC's expression altered before the broadcasting lenses could focus upon her. A subtle automatic contraction occurred near the edge of her lips, representing the specific micro-expression gambling professionals dedicate entire careers attempting to hide. Madame, he murmured gently, do you identify this specific automobile? The image displayed an ivory Tesla Model 3 angled awkwardly, positioned partially atop a sidewalk boundary and partially stretching across a dual parking zone. It displayed a New York registration tag. A legislative authorization marker rested upon the interior panel. The golden emblem appeared fuzzy within the picture, yet it remained unmistakable to anybody who had ever stepped past the entrance of the Capitol structure. AOC's lips separated, then sealed tightly. She located her phrasing. I refuse to provide statements regarding personal matters, however. Kennedy was currently shaking his skull delicately. He was not gesturing precisely at her, but rather at the entire situation, mirroring how a gentleman shakes his skull regarding a narrative he has absorbed from excessive testifiers spanning numerous tribunals. Madam, I am avoiding inquiries regarding personal matters. I am inquiring regarding the underlying concept. During 2018, you occupied a platform alongside Senator Bernie Sanders, and you issued this statement. Quote, for an extensive period, we provided funds to Tesla, we provided funds to numerous individuals, and we received zero yield regarding our financial placement. You criticized Tesla. You criticized the municipal grants that constructed the enterprise. You labeled the corporation an ultra-wealthy squander. He placed the image downward. He retrieved it once more. Subsequently, during 2020, you acquired one. An extended-range Tesla Model 3. The commercial value equals $59,000. The attendees produced a noise. It failed to represent a chuckle. It was an expression closer to an exhalation of realization. It mirrored the specific noise a congregation produces whenever the minister identifies the transgression audibly, while every person seated in the benches recognizes the reality. Subsequently, madam, during May of 2021, your Tesla vehicle was captured via photograph resting unlawfully outside a Whole Foods grocery facility situated within the Navy Yard sector of Washington, D.C. He allowed the setting to resonate. Whole Foods, madam. Whole Foods. The specific Whole Foods facility that operates under the ownership of Amazon. The specific Amazon that operates under the ownership of Jeff Bezos. The exact Jeff Bezos you claimed was systematically ruining America. The exact Amazon you blocked the agreement with inside Long Island City. He dropped the image and stared at her above the upper rim of his spectacles. I remain merely a traditional rural attorney originating from Madisonville, Louisiana. However, within the region where I reside, whenever you inform citizens that ultra-wealthy executives embody wickedness, and subsequently you depart and operate their automobile traveling to their grocery facility, parking unlawfully simply because you believe you possess too much significance for the regulations, we maintain a specific term describing that behavior. It contains two phonetic sections and initiates with the letter H. The primary chuckle originated from a minority gentleman seated within the fourth tier. He chuckled and instantly shielded his lips, appearing astonished at his own reaction. The chuckle represented the specific kind of amusement that leaks out whenever a profoundly accurate concept shatters through polite decorum. Two positions away, an Asian female chuckled as well. Next, a sequence of university students located near the rear joined in. The surge traversed across the attendees in scattered segments. It failed to resemble the mocking amusement from the introduction when the attendees had chuckled at Kennedy. This represented a contrasting amusement. It was an admission-based amusement. It represented the amusement of a crowd that had been informed throughout the evening that the individual positioned at the podium supported their cause, and was currently understanding picture by picture that the individual stationed at the podium operated entirely unlike them in every aspect. Kennedy refused to grin. He permitted the amusement to flow and subsequently subside. And, madam, additional details remain. Because during 2023, upon the broadcast Face the Nation, the moderator, Margaret Brennan, questioned you regarding why you possessed a Tesla vehicle, while the United Auto Workers maintained a labor stoppage. Tesla manufactures automobiles lacking unionized workforces. You champion the labor organizations, yet you acquired the non-unionized automobile. You claimed you planned to exchange it. That occurred 3 years previously. You currently maintain possession of it. A journalist originating from Fox News questioned you during 2025 regarding whether you currently retained possession of the Tesla vehicle. Your response was, quote, citing protective concerns, I am declining to comment, end quote. He shook his skull while a partial grin brushed against the edge of his lips and vanished before developing into a genuine expression. Protective concerns, Basu. Originating from the female who stated ultra-wealthy executives must cease existing, operating the ultra-wealthy executive's automobile, traveling to the ultra-wealthy executive's grocery facility, and declining to address inquiries originating from her electoral base concerning whether she currently retains possession of the item. He extracted another document from within the satchel. It was a printed copy originating from a journalistic publication. He grasped it momentarily. Madame, during March of 2025, individuals possessing Tesla vehicles throughout America were encountering instances of property destruction. 80 separate events occurred. Automobiles were ignited within residential parking strips. Sales facilities were assaulted utilizing incendiary devices. The Justice Department categorized specific events among these as localized radicalism. 3 individuals faced criminal indictments. They confront potential sentences spanning 5 to 20 years inside a national penitentiary. He placed the publication down. You faced inquiries on camera regarding whether the liberal commentary labeling Elon Musk an authoritarian figure could possess any link to those specific assaults. Your response was, quote, citing protective concerns, I am declining to comment, end quote. The identical response you provide regarding your Tesla vehicle. The identical response you provide regarding the appeals for legislative destruction. That appears extremely advantageous, madam. Protective concerns encompasses a massive territory. AOC's vocalization emerged fractured when she attempted to speak. This represents an HYP. The expression refused to materialize. This represents an HYP. It was a minuscule, powerless, partial sound lacking any further substance. Kennedy paused, mirroring how he had paused previously. Subsequently, he spoke gently. I continue anticipating hearing that specific term. It appears to be causing you difficulty currently. He extracted one additional sheet of paper originating from the satchel. It was briefer during this instance. It contained a solitary sentence. $2,000 monthly, madam. That represents the lease regarding your premium residence located in the Navy Yard. It exists within the identical sector housing the Whole Foods facility. The Free Beacon publication detailed the structure. It features an ascending barrier, twin swimming facilities, enclosed sporting courts, a digital golf experience, an elevated canine recreation area, and a vapor chamber. $2,000 monthly simply for a single-room unit. The average lease regarding an employed household located in your district inside the Bronx equals $1,600 covering a single-bedroom unit. You submit higher lease payments inside Washington than your electoral base submits to exist within their personal residences. He pivoted gradually, facing the attendees. However, the garment stated tax the rich, the Tesla vehicle represented an ultra-wealthy automobile, the Whole Foods facility represented Bezos, and the residence exists inside the most luxurious sector of Washington featuring an ascending barrier. He hoisted the image upward one final time. Allow them to view it once more. Citizens, this represents exactly what we label sparkling wine socialism. The individuals occupying the peak distribute outrage to the individuals occupying the base, while they experience the existence of the exact individuals they claim require taxing into non-existence. That certainly fails to represent financial policy. That certainly fails to represent righteousness. That represents a deception. The initial genuine ovation supporting Kennedy erupted precisely then. It remained modest. It remained dispersed. It involved three tiers positioned within the center of the crowd alongside a scattered group of individuals occupying the outer edges. However, it remained genuine. Perhaps 40 individuals, or maybe 50 individuals, situated inside an MSNBC recording space located in central Manhattan during April of 2026 were cheering for a Republican originating from Louisiana. Kennedy nodded a single time. He placed the image downward. Presently, madam, he stated, let us discuss exactly what your massive legislation would actually demand from the employed citizens you claim you champion. Part 5 introduces the third sleeve. The third sleeve appeared emerald green. It remained bulkier than the previous ones, packed tightly with documents. The emblem pressed across the exterior stated American Action Forum Economic Analysis, Green New Deal. Kennedy refrained from opening the document immediately. He permitted it to rest upon the desk while he removed his spectacles, cleaned them utilizing a compact ivory fabric originating from his chest pocket, and positioned them back onto his face. The motion remained intentional. It represented the specific hesitation that attorneys employ inside tribunals whenever the upcoming inquiry represents the ultimate question. Madam, he stated, you stated you champion the employed demographic. Explain to me exactly what your Green New Deal requires regarding financial terms, using simple language. She had remained anticipating this specific topic. She had remained organizing her thoughts for it throughout every preceding segment, seeking the inquiry she could ultimately resolve. She adjusted her posture inside her seat. The expense associated with stagnation regarding the environmental emergency remained significantly more severe than the expense associated with— Madam, Kennedy interjected softly, I requested a numerical figure. Exactly what is the amount? Evaluations fluctuate, and the structure of the inquiry relies entirely upon— Well, permit me to read the numerical figures for you, madam. Considering the evaluations fluctuate, he unsealed the sleeve. The initial document represented a title sheet. The subsequent sheet contained overview data. The American Action Forum, managed by Doug Holtz-Eakin, previously guided the Congressional Budget Office operating under both factions. This includes Republican leadership teams and Democratic leadership teams. They maintain a dual-party standing. Their evaluation states your Green New Deal demands between $51 trillion and $93 trillion spanning a decade. He paused. He permitted the digit to locate its path into the auditorium. trillion utilizing the letter T, 51 trillion extending to 93 trillion. To place that into perspective, the complete yearly economic output regarding the United States equals approximately $28 trillion. Your legislation demands up to 3 years covering every item the nation generates. Every automobile, every residence, every baked good, every cut of meat, every compensation check. 3 years encompassing every item we manufacture simply vanishes. Another document appeared. Competitive Enterprise Institute evaluation. The per-residence expense during the initial year equals $74,287. He stared above the spectacles directly at her. $74,000 per household within a single year simply allocated for power generation. He extracted another document originating from the sleeve. It was the specific sheet containing the diagram. He hoisted it upward. Madam, do you comprehend the average residential income located within your personal district? $68,000? 68. Your legislation demands $74,000 from each household. That represents an amount greater than they generate. You are demanding employed households situated in the Bronx and Queens to submit higher amounts regarding power invoices than they transport home during an entire year simply to maintain their illumination. He allowed the concept to resonate. Following the initial year, the expense decreases toward $47,755 per household annually. $47,000 every continuous year eternally simply for power generation. The attendees had become silent once again. It was the specific type of quietness that succeeds a numerical figure too massive to debate. Kennedy grabbed another document. He grasped it for an extended duration prior to speaking. 1.1 million careers eliminated annually, matching the Heritage Foundation evaluation. 1.1 million American employed households devastated every single year spanning multiple decades. He shifted his gaze upward. Permit me to explain exactly who that involves, madam. The conduit metalworkers located in Beaumont, Texas, representing males possessing palms resembling hide. The subterranean excavators located in Mingo County, West Virginia, representing the third generation occupying the exact cavity their paternal grandfathers carved. The transport operators steering massive haulers originating from Joplin, Missouri. The processing plant staff located in Lake Charles, Louisiana, situated within my personal state, who nourish their households relying on scheduled rotations. The automobile facility staff located in Lordstown, Ohio. The gas extraction teams located in Pennsylvania. The boring operators located in North Dakota. The petroleum sector laborers located in Midland, Texas. The vessel fabricators located in Pascagoula, Mississippi. Citizens who awaken at 4 o'clock in the morning and return to their residences at 7 o'clock at night. Citizens whose spines remain curved due to the labor. Citizens who constructed this nation utilizing their bare palms. He paused. Your legislation eliminates every single one of those careers. Every single one of those households. Every single one of those municipalities. Not via an accident. It happens deliberately. It operates as a regulation, as an objective, as a directive. He grabbed the computational device. It was the identical battered portable calculator he had utilized inside Senate sessions since before AOC attended intermediate education. The keys clattered amidst the quietness occupying the recording space. 68,000, he stated, processing the arithmetic audibly. The average income located in your district. Minus 74,000 representing the initial year power expense originating from your legislation. That equals. The screen illuminated. He hoisted it upward. Negative 6,000. Negative 6,000 indicates an employed household located in your district plunges $6,000 into debt during the initial year simply attempting to maintain the illumination. Simply attempting to warm the unit during February. Simply attempting to transport their offspring toward the critical care center whenever she becomes ill. He placed the computational device downward. And madam, that certainly fails to represent the most severe element. He extracted one ultimate document. It represented a printed copy originating from the Washington Post. It appeared yellow due to age, with the edge secured by a staple. He had transported this paper for multiple years. The attendees could observe the reality based on how deteriorated it appeared. This represents a discussion featuring your previous administrative director, Saika Chakrabarty. The date of distribution is the 10th of May, 2019. He participated in a discussion alongside the Washington Post. He provided them a statement that has occupied my desk compartment for 7 years. He examined the text. He vocalized it leisurely. Quote, "The fascinating element regarding the Green New Deal remains that it completely avoided originating as an environmental concept initially. We genuinely consider it an initiative questioning how you alter the complete economic structure," end quote. He shifted his gaze upward. How do you alter the complete economic structure? He collapsed the paper. Your personal leading assistant stated on the administrative record directly to the Washington Post that the legislation completely lacked any genuine connection to the environment. He stated it focused upon radically shifting the American economic structure. It focused upon dismantling it and constructing a different entity. He allowed the phrasing to settle. Madam, whenever the employed citizens of Pennsylvania inquire why they lack the funds to secure a fuel fill-up, this provides the explanation. Whenever the transport operators in Ohio inquire why their propellant costs 40% extra compared to 5 years previously, this provides the explanation. Whenever the metal workers in Pittsburgh inquire why their facility is closing down, this provides the explanation. Whenever Mr. Jefferson in Long Island City inquires why the training initiatives vanished, this provides the explanation. He gestured delicately toward Marcus Jefferson. The gentleman rested in the third tier, starting from the rear, keeping his palms interlocked atop his lap. The objective never focused upon the environment. It focused upon shifting an economic structure that you believe employed citizens lack the intelligence to operate independently. It focused upon constructing a nation where the administrators mandate the rules and the employed citizens simply comply. The moderator managing the broadcast, Michael Donovan, had remained completely mute throughout the entire segment. Currently, he cleared his vocal passage. "Representative," he stated cautiously, "the evaluations regarding these expenses are extensively referenced. Do you possess an opposing projection?" The recording space grew silent, utilizing a fresh manner. It represented the specific quietness that arrives whenever an official has ceased signaling favor toward the Liberal candidate. AOC parted her lips. She possessed 0 numerical figures. She attempted to speak. "This represents an R." The expression refused to materialize. She shut her lips. She attempted once more, softer during this instance, operating almost as a murmur. "This represents an R." It was a partial sound, absolutely nothing further. The moderator refused to rescue her. He lacked the authorization to intervene. He lacked the authorization any longer. Kennedy refused to interject. 5 seconds elapsed, then 10 seconds elapsed, then 15 seconds elapsed. The lenses focused upon her expression. The recording space paused its respiration. The most recognized voice operating within progressive politics inside America lacked any rebuttal. The attendees observed the reality. The lenses observed the reality as well. So did every individual monitoring the broadcast from their living spaces located in Iowa, Ohio, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, and Florida. Senator Kennedy nodded delicately. He shut the emerald sleeve. "Madam, that represents exactly what we label an indicator down in Louisiana. Whenever an individual lacks the ability to even present a counter-argument, we understand they lack any strategic options to deploy." He deposited the sleeve upon the desk adjacent to the initial 2. "Presently," he stated, "let us discuss an issue significantly more burdensome than currency." Part 6 introduces the 4th sleeve. The 4th sleeve appeared dark black. It remained bulkier than the preceding ones. The emblem pressed across the exterior simply stated, "United States Senate Judiciary Committee Oversight." Kennedy deposited it upon the desk, generating a gentle thud, and refrained from unsealing it. He permitted his palm to rest atop it for an extended duration. When he vocalized, his volume remained softer than it had been throughout the entire evening. It completely failed to represent the rural attorney routine any longer. It represented an element positioned beneath that persona. It represented something significantly more ancient. It was the specific tone a gentleman utilizes while standing near a burial site. "Madame," he murmured, "I desire to launch this segment utilizing a single term." He paused. "Auschwitz." The recording space became completely motionless. The vibration originating from the climate control became noticeable once again. Multiple individuals within the crowd inhaled simultaneously. It mirrored how individuals inhale inside a space where someone has summoned the deceased. Dachau, Treblinka, Bergen-Belsen, Sobibor, Majdanek, Chelmno. He identified the locations leisurely, articulating them individually, mimicking a formal attendance check. Internment facilities. Fatality processing plants. 6 million Jewish individuals perished. 1.1 million perished at Auschwitz individually. Romani individuals, Sinti individuals, impaired minors suffocated inside medical centers. Polish religious leaders, Soviet captives, homosexual individuals, Jehovah's Witnesses, ideological objectors. The comprehensive catalog of mortal wickedness structured into a locomotive transit schedule. Locomotives operating precisely on schedule. Schedules authorized by administrative workers. Administrative workers who returned home to their spouses during the evening. He stared at AOC. He permitted his gaze to linger upon her. "Madame, during June of 2019, you launched a live Instagram broadcast, and you issued a statement, and I quote, 'The United States is operating internment facilities situated along our southern boundaries,' end quote." AOC located her vocal capacity. It sounded significantly more muted compared to her introductory remarks. The aggression had vacated the tone. However, the phrasing continued to exist. "I maintain my position regarding that statement, and I maintain my position regarding—" Kennedy hoisted a single digit upward. "Pause for a moment, madam. Prior to you maintaining your position regarding that statement, I desire to read you exactly what the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum stated concerning your remark. Not my personal statement. Not the Republican faction's statement. The authorized Holocaust Museum representing the United States of America. It was instituted via a legislative directive during 1980. It was constructed upon the National Mall. It is attended annually by surviving individuals. The museum that operates for a singular purpose, and a singular purpose exclusively: to preserve the memory of the genuine 6 million individuals." He unsealed the dark sleeve. The initial document represented a media bulletin. Quote, "The United States Holocaust Memorial Museum completely dismisses initiatives attempting to construct comparisons connecting the Holocaust alongside separate occurrences, regardless of whether they are historical or modern. The museum additionally dismisses initiatives launched by individuals or organizations attempting to equate the Holocaust against differing catastrophes," end quote. He collapsed the document. He placed it downward. "That represents the Holocaust surviving individuals alongside the museum that operates to respect their legacy, informing you that your perspective was incorrect. They refrained from stating the message delicately, madam. They stated your remark was dismissed. Completely dismissed. That represents an intense phrase. They refrained from utilizing it frequently." He extracted an additional document. "And madam, the following day after you generated that remark, the Auschwitz Memorial Museum located in Poland replied directly to your account. The genuine museum situated at the genuine fatality facility. They broadcast a digital message originating from their authorized account. They referenced your statements, and they issued this remark. Quote, internment facilities represented locations dedicated to methodical administrative execution. They completely failed to represent symbolic concepts. They completely failed to represent hyperbolic statements. equating those locations against differing circumstances, even possessing the absolute finest objectives, disrespects the legacy belonging to those individuals who endured agony and perished at that location." End quote. He shifted his gaze upward. "Auschwitz, madam. The genuine museum situated at the genuine fatality facility where 1.1 million individuals perished informed you that your perspective was incorrect." He extracted an additional document. This specific paper displays the emblem belonging to the United States Senate. "And during the exact month you labeled migrant structures as internment facilities, the United States Congress executed a ballot regarding a legislative proposal. Senate Bill 811, $4.5 billion allocated for critical welfare resources intended for migrant minors located at the boundary. Resources allocated for provisions. Resources allocated for clinical treatment. Resources allocated for cleansing agents, resting areas, and garments. Resources intended for the minors, madam. The exact minors you claimed were trapped inside internment facilities." He stared at her. "You cast a negative ballot." AOC's lips parted. The justification appeared noticeably thinner currently, functioning almost automatically. Distributing additional resources toward the departments executing human rights violations. "Madam," Kennedy interjected, and his volume remained soft. "The legislation focused upon providing provisions intended for minors. You cast a negative ballot regarding provisions intended for minors." He recited her exact platform statement originating from the 27th of June 2019. He recited it precisely term by term originating from the legislative registry. He recited the text leisurely. He permitted the phrasing to emerge into the recording space individually and discover their natural gravity. "And madam, this represents the segment that causes my spirit to ache. Because while you were labeling American structures as internment facilities and casting negative ballots regarding nourishing minors, do you comprehend exactly who those resources were destined to nourish? 6-year-old children, 8-year-old children, Hispanic minors, adolescents whose guardians endured the transit traversing through Mexico attempting to arrive at this location, the adolescents situated within your personal cultural demographic. You cast a negative ballot regarding provisions intended for those specific individuals." The recording space remained silent, possessing a differing quality compared to previously. The prior silences had represented the quietness of a crowd observing a legislator becoming trapped. This specific silence represented an alternative concept. This represented the quietness of a crowd that had ceased supporting either faction and had commenced contemplating its personal offspring. "However, madam, the most severe element regarding this segment fails to concern events that occurred during 2019. The most severe element involves exactly what you stated 3 weeks previously. The 1st of April, 2026. Inside a confidential space located in Manhattan." He extracted a typed transcript. The emblem positioned at the upper edge represented a standard design, failing to reflect any administrative body. It simply functioned as an identifier. "New York City Democratic Socialists of America internal discussion recording. Madam, during April 1st regarding this current year, you participated in a confidential DSA discussion located in New York City. You assumed the event operated off the public registry. You assumed absolutely nobody was capturing the audio. However, the gathering was broadcast digitally toward affiliates, and city and state magazines secured a fragmented audio file. They distributed the audio on April 1st. It currently exists within the public registry." He examined the text. "I have avoided casting a ballot authorizing resources toward Israel on any occasion, and I shall avoid doing so eternally. The Israeli administration must possess the capability to fund their personal armaments, assuming they desire to equip their forces." End quote. He paused. A DSA affiliate inquired further, requesting clarification from you directly. "Would you pledge to cast a negative ballot regarding any expenditure allocated for armaments directed toward Israel, encompassing theoretical protective mechanisms? Iron Dome projectile defense. The mechanism that destroys projectiles launched toward non-combatants, he recited her reply. Quote, affirmative, end quote. He collapsed the paper. Madame, Iron Dome refrains from firing at any individual. It refrains from eliminating any individual. It refrains from breaching any territory. It refrains from conquering territory. It refrains from selecting targets. It operates as a mechanism launching defensive projectiles that destroy offensive projectiles launched toward non-combatants, launched toward residential structures, launched toward medical centers, launched toward an early education facility located in Sderot, launched toward a religious celebration located in Jerusalem, launched toward a pastry establishment located in Tel Aviv packed with adolescents consuming food following educational sessions. He stared at her. You pledged to cast a negative ballot opposing the barrier, the exact element that halts the projectiles. You stated you would refuse to even endorse the defensive mechanism that prevents minors from suffering explosive injuries while traveling toward educational facilities. He extracted one ultimate document. Permit me to explain exactly what Iron Dome genuinely accomplishes, madam. On the 7th of October 2023, Hamas extremists unleashed roughly 5,000 projectiles targeting Israel during the initial surge of assaults. Iron Dome destroyed 90% of the projectiles that endangered inhabited zones. Lacking Iron Dome, the fatality count on October 7th would have failed to equal 1,200. It would have equaled 20,000, potentially higher. Minors attending educational sessions, infants resting inside cradles, elderly individuals attending religious sanctuaries. Iron Dome preserved thousands of non-combatant existences during that afternoon. He placed the paper downward. And, madam, you pledged 3 weeks previously inside a confidential gathering where you assumed absolutely nobody was monitoring the audio to block the resources that maintain that barrier operating within the atmosphere. You pledged to permit the projectiles to penetrate. The attendees rested in a quietness that had evolved into an almost sacred state. Kennedy pivoted gradually toward the rear section of the recording space. Mrs. Rosario Mendez. Would you please rise, madam? A female stood up from the 7th tier. She appeared in her late 50s, sporting dark locks secured backward into a firm bun. She sported a dark blue dress alongside a knitted sweater. It represented the specific garment a Catholic female sports while attending a weekday religious service. A compact golden crucifix dangled near her neck. Her palms remained interlocked directly ahead of her torso. She refrained from gripping any textual references. Rosario Mendez communicated lacking any paper assistance. Her volume remained consistent. The Hispanic dialect sounded gentle beneath the English phrasing, mirroring how a maternal figure's original dialect lingers within her tone after she has practiced the replacement language for 40 years. My identity is Rosario Mendez. I was born inside Havana, Cuba during 1968. My paternal figure operated as an educator. My maternal figure operated as a medical assistant. Both individuals operated as ideological objectors. Both individuals observed companions vanish during the evening. My paternal figure faced detainment by Castro's covert security forces on 3 separate occasions. During the third instance, spanning 1979, he faced captivity lasting 14 months inside a genuine penitentiary. It failed to represent a symbolic concept. It represented a genuine penitentiary, a concrete enclosure lacking any illumination. They assaulted his body utilizing a rubber bludgeon every Tuesday alongside every Friday. He returned home weighing 112 pounds. He had previously weighed 178. She inhaled deeply. We fled Castro's administration during 1982, traveling upon a fishing vessel. I was 13 years of age. We departed from a shoreline settlement situated near Mariel, occupying a vessel designed accommodating 8 individuals. Our group contained 31 individuals. 3 individuals failed to survive. 1 individual represented an infant. Her maternal figure grasped her form throughout the final 6 hours comprising the journey and wept while failing to produce any noise. Her identity was Esperanza. That translates to optimism. The recording space refused to shift. We arrived within the United States. My household requested lawful sanctuary at the administrative facility located in Miami. We lingered 11 years awaiting our nationalization status. 11 years enduring administrative forms. 11 years enduring interrogations. 11 years enduring historical evaluations. 11 years visiting the migration facility located within central Newark simply to refresh our residential details. 11 years executing the procedure utilizing the correct method. She adjusted her posture. I represent a minority individual. I represent a Hispanic female. I represent a migrant. I represent a Catholic. I represent an American citizen. I represent a spouse. I represent a maternal figure guiding 3 offspring. I represent a certified medical assistant. I operate the operative level at St. Barnabas Medical Center located in Livingston, New Jersey. I have cast a ballot during every single election cycle since achieving citizenship status during 1993. I have supported Republican candidates throughout the majority of those periods and Democratic candidates throughout specific periods. I supported Barack Obama on 2 occasions. I supported John McCain. I supported Donald Trump during 2016. I supported his campaign again during 2024. I represent an individual representative. I completely failed to represent a statistical category. She stared directly at AOC. Throughout 7 years, I have observed you exploit my appearance to advance regulations that damage my offspring's nation. I have observed you label worried American maternal figures prejudiced simply for requesting that every person arrive utilizing the identical lawful method I utilized. I have observed you label boundary structures as internment facilities while my relatives residing in Cuba occupy genuine ones. Genuine ones, Representative. Featuring genuine metal barriers. Featuring genuine physical torment. I have observed you claim protecting minors against projectiles represents mass destruction. And tonight, I traveled here utilizing my personal funds, riding a transit coach originating from Newark traveling toward Manhattan, simply to inform you directly facing all your advocates that you completely fail to represent my perspective. Her volume refused to escalate. It became softer somehow, which ultimately rendered it significantly more powerful. You completely fail to represent lawful Hispanic migrants. You completely fail to represent individuals possessing religious devotion. You completely fail to represent employed females. You completely fail to represent sanctuary seekers who genuinely escaped actual internment facilities. You solely represent your personal interests alongside the individuals who funded your garment. She returned to her seat. The quietness following her action represented the most profound quietness occupying the evening. It stretched across multiple seconds. The broadcasting lenses refused to shift. The moderator refused to vocalize. AOC's gaze remained locked upon the desk. Her palms remained pressed flat against the timber, appearing pale near the joints. She attempted one final instance to vocalize the term. She attempted to state prejudiced. She attempted to state sexist. She attempted to state Islamophobic. She attempted to state transphobic. She attempted to state any specific term among the phrases that had sustained her political trajectory spanning 7 years and terminated 100 dialogues prior to their initiation. Absolutely nothing emerged. Her lips shifted, her torso elevated. She generated a minuscule noise that completely failed to form a word. Subsequently, she ceased attempting altogether. She simply stared downward toward the desk. Kennedy paused for an extended duration. He refrained from boasting. He refrained from applying pressure. He simply waited, mirroring how a gentleman hesitates during a burial service, allowing the relatives to secure their balance. Subsequently, he shut the dark sleeve. "Madame," he murmured exceptionally quietly, "I believe we have concluded." Part 7 introduces the ultimate statement. Senator Kennedy elevated himself. It represented the initial occasion he had elevated himself throughout the entire evening. 2.5 hours into the programming, he elevated himself, mirroring how an elderly gentleman elevates himself, moving leisurely, utilizing a single palm pressed against the desk, seeking stability. He secured his dark gray jacket, utilizing the alternative palm. He retrieved the satchel. He refrained from glancing at AOC immediately. He glanced toward Marcus Jefferson, located in the third tier, starting from the rear. Then he glanced toward Rosario Mendez, located in the seventh tier. Subsequently, he pivoted ultimately to face the female sporting the beige jacket. He moved past the desk, taking 3 leisurely paces. He halted directly ahead of her. When he vocalized, his volume remained softer than it had been throughout any preceding segments. The Southern dialect continued to exist, yet the theatrical elements had vanished. The remaining element featured a gentleman addressing another individual. "Madam, I intend to share a concept with you. I traveled here tonight because your broadcasting channel requested my presence. They assumed you intended to humiliate the rural attorney. Perhaps you assumed that reality as well. That remains acceptable. I have experienced underestimation throughout my entire trajectory. I attended a modest institution titled Vanderbilt pursuing undergraduate studies. Next, I attended a modest institution titled the University of Virginia pursuing legal studies. Next, I attended an institution situated beyond the ocean titled Magdalen College, Oxford, pursuing an additional degree involving legal studies. Next, I returned home toward Madisonville and began advocating for citizens who suffered injuries caused by massive corporations. Over 40 years, he pivoted facing the broadcasting lenses. The attendees remained incredibly quiet, allowing you to detect the illumination rigs. You labeled me an artifact. You labeled Trump an authoritarian. You labeled the Republican faction a fatalistic obsession. You labeled conservative electors frightened elderly males terrified regarding the upcoming era. He pivoted back toward her. I genuinely represent an artifact. I represent 74 years of age. I have existed long enough to comprehend exactly what genuine Americans resemble. And they completely fail to resemble a Met Gala. They completely fail to resemble $60,000 Tesla vehicles stationed near Whole Foods. They completely fail to resemble premium residences featuring ascending barriers. They completely fail to resemble custom garments displaying tax the rich, while a minority-owned enterprise waits 6 months attempting to secure compensation. He motioned directly behind his position toward the rear section of the recording space. Genuine Americans resemble Mr. Marcus Jefferson seated nearby. He forfeited 5 years composing his existence directly due to a digital statement. Genuine Americans resemble Mrs. Rosario Mendez. She sacrificed 11 years standing within a queue anticipating citizenship while you indicted citizens matching her background regarding intolerance simply for adhering to the regulations. Genuine Americans resemble the metal workers in Beaumont and the transport operators in Joplin and the medical assistants in Newark and the training initiative adolescents in Long Island City who never received their opportunity. He paused. My paternal figure operated as an agricultural nutrient vendor located in Centerville, Mississippi. He labored his entire existence. He navigated 300 miles daily utilizing an aged Emerald Buick that possessed the scent of cured leaves and heavy fuel. He distributed seeds and nutrients toward agricultural workers who compensated him utilizing paper currency and occasionally utilizing poultry. He never generated anything exceeding $30,000 during his most successful year. He financed my journey toward Vanderbilt, madam. He financed my journey toward UVA legal studies. He financed my journey toward Oxford. Not because he possessed massive wealth. Because he labored. He labored until he lacked the capacity to labor any longer. He perished due to a cardiac event while positioned at the navigation wheel belonging to that Buick during 1991. They discovered his form positioned upon a rural pathway situated outside the municipality with the motor still operating. His volume grew gentler. You labeled him a frightened elderly male tonight. Indirectly, whenever you labeled every single conservative elector utilizing that phrase, you labeled my maternal figure a frightened elderly female. You labeled my relative Beauregard, who lacked the capability to process text until he reached 31 years of age, yet who constructed a fishing supply establishment located in Zachary, Louisiana, utilizing his personal palms and managed the operation spanning 53 years. You labeled him a frightened elderly male. You labeled every crustacean harvester, metalworker, agricultural laborer, transport operator, and modest enterprise manager residing within my state a frightened elderly male. You labeled every lawful migrant originating from Cuba, Vietnam, Korea, and the Philippines who supported Republican candidates because they escaped genuine socialism. You labeled them frightened elderly males as well. He hoisted the satchel upward. And tonight, madam, the sole element remaining regarding your political trajectory is exactly what exists inside this satchel. 5 phases, 5 collections of evidence. The Met Gala, where the minority creator remained uncompensated spanning 6 months. Amazon, where 25,000 careers perished due to a digital statement. The Tesla vehicle stationed unlawfully near the ultra-wealthy executive's grocery facility. The Green New Deal, which demands from employed households amounts exceeding what they generate. And the Iron Dome, where you stated you intended to block the defensive mechanism that prevents projectiles from striking minors traveling toward educational facilities. He paused. You desired to argue against Donald Trump tonight. Donald Trump fails to occupy this space. I occupy this space. And during 2 hours and 20 minutes, I simply constructed the argument condemning him utilizing your personal phrasing, your personal ballots, your personal evidence, your personal garment, your personal automobile, your personal legislation, your personal confidential DSA audio. I refuse to introduce a single concept toward this platform that failed to originate from your personal existence. He stared at her one ultimate time. His gaze completely lacked malice. Madam, I secure absolutely zero satisfaction from this event. Observing a youthful female dismantle her personal existence due to arrogance and political doctrine fails to represent an enjoyable experience. You possess intelligence. You attended Boston University. You maneuvered your path upward. You labored as a server located inside Manhattan. You understood exactly what the experience resembled while calculating gratuities following the conclusion of a rotation. You possessed every single opportunity to function as a genuine advocate supporting employed citizens. Every single opportunity. And somewhere traversing the pathway, you determined that remaining accurate possessed less significance compared to appearing accurate. That appearing enraged proved simpler compared to securing solutions. That pointing fingers at citizens who resembled me proved simpler compared to assisting citizens who resembled Mr. Jefferson seated nearby. That represents the genuine catastrophe. That represents the sole concept causing me sorrow tonight. He pivoted. He strolled backward toward his seat. He deposited the satchel downward. He assumed his seating position. He interlocked his palms upon the desk. Mr. Donovan, he stated, glancing toward the moderator, I believe we have concluded operations here, gentlemen. The recording space remained silent, subsequently transitioning slowly originating from the rear tiers. An individual initiated an applause. A single gentleman, a secondary individual joined, a tertiary individual joined, an entire tier located within the center portion. Next, the ovation shifted, mimicking atmospheric systems traversing across an open expanse. Next, the complete recording space, the MSNBC New York crowd. The crowd that had roared with approval when AOC labeled Trump Mussolini. The crowd that had chuckled regarding Kennedy's marsupial remark, the identical crowd. They elevated themselves. They clapped supporting a Republican originating from Louisiana spanning 2 minutes and 47 seconds. Marcus Jefferson elevated himself alongside them. Rosario Mendez matched the action. So did the minority female seated within the second tier who had pressed her palm against her lips whenever Kennedy had identified Aurora James. So did the university students seated within the rear tiers who had arrived intending to applaud AOC and were currently clapping supporting a rural attorney they had never encountered whenever the evening commenced. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez rested at the desk, keeping her skull angled downward. The crimson lip color appeared smeared near the edge of her lips. The beige jacket appeared creased where her limbs had remained interlocked. Her metallic jewelry reflected the recording space illumination one ultimate instance. Her palms remained pressed flat against the timber. She refused to weep. She refused to scream. She refused to elevate herself and depart the platform. She simply rested, mirroring how an individual rests whenever the foundation supporting their existence has vanished beneath their stance. And the absolute sole action remaining involves hesitating while waiting for the environment to cease rotating. Michael Donovan stared toward the broadcasting lens. His expression appeared deliberately vacant. "We shall return momentarily," he stated. Transition toward commercial messaging. Approaching sunrise, the segment had experienced rebroadcasts across every single channel. MSNBC broadcasted the footage twice, lacking any supplementary commentary. The Mr. Jefferson statement individually had accumulated 64 million views prior to midday. The Rosario Mendez statement reached 51 million. The Iron Dome confrontation secured 38. The vocal fractures were currently functioning as internet phenomena. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez distributed a declaration utilizing her administrative director, Mike Casca. The representative continues concentrating upon assisting the citizens occupying New York's 14th legislative territory. She refused to address inquiries. She completely avoided appearing on broadcast media spanning 14 days. She eliminated a fortnight comprising public engagements. Her personnel ceased replying toward journalistic requests. Approaching Thursday, Senator Bernie Sanders, questioned on CNN regarding whether he supported AOC, hesitated spanning 9 seconds prior to providing an answer. "The recent evening generated questions," he stated. "Our coalition must provide explanations." House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries refused to provide commentary when intercepted by journalists situated at a Capitol Hill media gathering. He maneuvered past the broadcasting lenses, keeping his skull angled downward. The DSA New York City branch conducted an exclusive crisis gathering that persisted for 7 hours. They refused to distribute a declaration. Senator Kennedy's publication, How to Test Negative for Stupid and Why Washington Never Will, rebounded toward the New York Times top-selling registry, occupying the primary position. There existed zero legislative removal. There existed zero voluntary departure. There existed zero FBI inquiry. There existed zero metal restraints. There existed zero criminal parade. There existed zero national indictments. There existed zero investigative panel. There solely existed documented evidence. And documented evidence refuses to vanish whenever the ovation diminishes, the broadcasting lenses power down. And political doctrine impacts undeniable documented evidence. Who genuinely endures the penalty regarding the massive guarantees distributed atop a legislative platform? The legislators who distribute them, or the laboring class residents who are compelled to endure alongside the aftermath?